Schatz, contributing writer Bryan Knowles. Easy for me to say. Hope you all had a good Christmas weekend, a good Christmas week, and hope you weren't spending we hope you're spending your holiday with your friends and family and not watching the Denver Broncos do whatever that was in their approximate summation of a game resembling American football. We're going to jump right into this and talk about the coaching change in Denver. And Bryan, I believe you're so proud of the title for this segment. I'm just going to let you announce it yourself.
We're starting today noting that Nathaniel can't hack it. Nathaniel Hackett became the 5th coach in the modern era to be fired before completing his first full season, joining the illustrious list of Urban Meyer, Bobby Petrino, Pete McCulley, and Lou Holtz. The Broncos are an embarrassment, I think it is fair to say at this point in time. They're dead last in points per game. They're dead last in third down conversion percentage. They're last at a bunch of other things. They're I think 29th currently in DVOA. They've been a disaster. And Nathaniel Hackett's tenure has to go right up there with some of the absolute worst in NFL history.
They are not last in red zone offense anymore.
No.
Yeah, they've improved.
They have improved in red zone offense. They are not, which considering how bad they were in the first half of the season is kind of remarkable.
Yeah. Look, we were saying all along they would improve there. It's just that everything else also collapsed. So, including the defense over the past month, because they were first in DVOA or close to it for a while there.
And now they were first for a week and second a lot, and then 7th. They're 7th now, and falling.
Yeah. I do have to actually amend this list, Bryan, because you have 5 names here as coaches who were fired in the first full season, including Bobby Petrino. Bobby Petrino would have been fired and deserved to have been fired, but he was not technically fired. He resigned in disgrace by cowardly leaving notes in his players' lockers and vanishing.
Yes.
So that's a whole other issue, and a good reason to consider him as well as the worst coach any of us has ever seen. We were talking right before we went on the air. The Nathaniel Hackett versus Urban Meyer worst head coach in NFL history debate is a good one. Because I'll say this for Urban Meyer. I don't remember a game the Jaguars played where they were getting into fist fights with each other and with the other team at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, they were too busy. He was too busy kicking his kickers in practice to train them on the proper aspects of fighting in all directions simultaneously. See, that's what you get when you hire a UC Davis grad as your head coach, thinking. Oh, poor Hackett. Poor Broncos fans, honestly. The Broncos now have missed the playoffs in the last 7 seasons, ever since they went to the Super Bowl. That's the second longest active streak, and it's the longest streak ever immediately following the Super Bowl win. So we've talked before with the Rams somewhat about what would you pay, to get your Super Bowl championship? What would you deal with afterwards? And well, how about 7 years of not even making it to the dance, even with the expanded playoffs?
Number 1 is the Jets, right?
The Jets are currently with a 12-year streak without making the playoffs, and they're still in it. That could end this year. The Broncos could take that over.
The wild card races in both conferences are not exactly. Everyone's tripping over themselves trying to get out of the playoffs, it seems.
So 37-point loss to the Rams is the worst loss on Christmas Day in NFL history. Although there isn't a history of Christmas Day games, although that is going to change because I have a feeling the NFL is going to try to take over Christmas Day whenever it's even close to a weekend from now on.
There's been a chunk of them, but I mean, the previous record was Dallas's crushing the Cowboys crushing the Titans back in 2000, 31-0. This was more embarrassing. This was. I mean, Russell Wilson started 0 for 3 with 2 interceptions. Like, they showed this on Nickelodeon. They broadcast this to children. Children had to watch this performance. This was.
He wasn't supposed to do that, says Patrick Starr. Yeah.
If that doesn't sum up the entire Broncos season, having Patrick Starr live broadcast your interception, I mean, I don't know what does.
And it's weird because they certainly weren't playing well earlier in the season, but they also had a number of very bad breaks or 1 or 2 bad coaching decisions. They were competitive and close, and they were all low-scoring defensive games, but they were there. But then down the stretch, it's like momentum can build throughout the season, but also negative momentum can build throughout the season. And the whole team feels like they don't want to be there. They're contractually obligated to show up and play a game. It's the only reason they're there. They'd rather be home for the holidays. And it's not good to watch.
Yeah, the new ownership had a press conference today explaining the decisions. They said they weren't planning on firing Hackett going into this week, but just the complete complete loss of control over the team basically forced their hand 2 weeks early. It was, yeah. I mean, you hear sometimes so and so has lost the team, so and so lost the team. This is the biggest example I've ever seen of a coach just completely losing just control over what's going on.
You're not old enough for Rich Kotite.
Yeah, I didn't watch him live at the very least. But with the offensive line yelling and Russell Wilson yelling at each other on the sidelines, there's a great shot of is it Quentin Son? I can't remember which receiver it is, just like screaming, like having a tantrum on the field mid Russell Wilson throw that ended up being an interception. Like because he saw it from the minute that he was open, there was a running line open, but no, Russ chucked it downfield into double coverage for the interception. He was walking off the field before the ball was caught.
Yeah, there's been multiple instances this year of wide receivers throwing tantrums because Russell Wilson didn't see them. It's a nightmare. It is an absolute nightmare. And as the numbers here say, one of the worst games of his career.
Yes,
Yeah.
ESPN's QBR had it as the worst game of his career. We had him with minus 95 passing DYAR, so it's one of the 10 worst games of his career by our numbers. And we put notes down here. How much dead money would be on the cap if you cut Russell Wilson?
Yeah.
Next year, $107 million.
It's impossible. The Broncos had in the press conference today. The Broncos were like, oh, we think Russell Wilson can be fixed. Well, I agree with that. You also have to say that because you have no other options. There is absolutely no way to do anything but bring Russell Wilson back as quarterback for the Broncos next season. It is the second hardest contract in the NFL to get out from under. You have to hope that whoever comes in can get Wilson back up to something resembling what he was in Seattle, because this is just a millstone around their neck, even before you take into account all the draft picks and everything they had to give up to get him. They can't really get rid of him until 2025.
And even then, they would have $50 million of dead money.
Yeah.
Which
would be a record, by the way.
I think the Falcons took on 40 to get rid of Matt Ryan.
Yeah, $40.5 million, which is the current record for most dead money in a single season.
Which
you can make $50 million work, especially if the salary cap can be on. You can make it work. You could theoretically make $108 million work if you wanted to, restructure all your players, screw up your future cap situation, and cut anyone with making anything whatsoever. But
yes.
No.
Yeah, the Rams this year have played 8 different undrafted free agent rookies, which is the kind of thing you have to do when you were in cap hell and draft pick hell, and that's sort of the future the Broncos are looking at here. But also in the future for the Broncos will be a new head coach, and we have betting odds on the new head coach. And Aaron, I know you are very excited to talk about these.
Yeah, the interesting thing about betting odds for a new head coach is when they come up with betting odds for things like the over/under or the spread, there's a lot of analysis that goes into that, a lot of analytics. There's no analytics that go into this. This is just pure guesswork, right? And it's also just schmuckbait. Like they put names on this list as schmuckbait who are just not going to be real. So what's amazing to me is the names that are on this list and aren't on this list. Okay. Sean Payton at 4-1 is the number one guy. So before we go any further, let's talk about, would Sean Payton want this job? Sean Payton would be tied to Russell Wilson for the next 3 years. Or 2 years, we thought? 2 years.
Two or three. Yeah.
For the next 2 years. Plus, he wants to bring Vic Fangio with him as defensive coordinator. And Vic Fangio probably doesn't want to go back to his team that fired him a year ago, even though the ownership group that fired him is different from the ownership group they have now. Does it feel to you like Sean Payton would want to take this job?
I can't imagine why.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea that's a retired level job right there.
If you're Sean Payton, and let's just look at the 3 jobs that are currently open. Who are you more likely to resuscitate? Kyler Murray, the 3rd or 4th best rookie, so let's say Will Levis, or Russell Wilson?
The highest ceiling there is probably Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
So,
or you can have a fresh rookie.
Yeah.
Or you can have Russell Wilson.
Floundering veteran sounds like the least fun of those those options.
So after Sean Payton, Dan Quinn at 5-1, Jim Caldwell 6-1, Shane Steichen 7-1, and D'Amico Ryans 15-2. Eric Bieniemy 9-1, Frank Reich 9-1, Kellen Moore 10-1, Elgiro Evero, the current defensive coordinator, 12-1, and Jim
Who just turned
Harbaugh
down, by the way.
12-1. He turned it down because it made a little sense for him. What is he going to prove in 2 games as interim coach that will help him get the head job?
That's true.
But I would say I don't think it would make sense to put any money on a defensive name here. If you're Denver, the goal of the next head coach is to fix Russell Wilson. Don't you need to get a young offensive mind? Don't you think? Either young offensive mind or Frank Reich.
Well, the other alternative there is that if you have so much work to save Russ and fix the offense, maybe you want a defensive head coach so your new coordinator can spend all their time and all their focus and stuff on resuscitating that offense.
Wouldn't you rather have someone who's proven that they can do it on an offense than have some young whippersnapper who has never run an offense?
Yes, absolutely.
So that would mean you would want. So what surprises me is the names that are not on here. Ben Johnson from the Lions, Brian Callahan from the Bengals.
Yep.
Right? Young, hot offensive names. Shane Steichen is the one young, hot offensive name on here. What's hilarious is when you get into the later names.
Yes.
Brian Schottenheimer at 18-1.
A reunion we've all been waiting for.
Well,
Darrell Bevel at 20-1.
See, now there's part of my brain here that says because Russell Wilson is what he is, try to talk to somebody who knows him and has worked with him and knows what they're getting into. Because clearly, it's very clear Nathaniel Hackett did not know what he was getting into in many aspects, but certainly involving his quarterback. So there's a question of if they would be interested, but that it makes them at least worth picking up the phone and asking if they're interested in seeing what they think about the situation. I don't think that's as ridiculous as some of the names further down the list.
Peyton Manning at 50-1.
That ridiculous. The football game being an audition for his new head coaching future.
Shannon Sharp at 100-1. Along with Bill Cowher at 66-1.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'd love to get out of his cozy TV job. Peyton Manning is, he seems so miserable in retirement. He'd want to be, and coaching with no experience worked so great for his center. I'm sure he's going to follow those footsteps.
Gary Kubiak at 100-1.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which actually is not completely insane. That one is not completely insane. Mike Shanahan at 100-1, or John Elway at 100-1. Those sound insane.
Yes.
And my favorite, Pete Carroll at 150-1. Schmuck bait. Schmuck bait.
I'm just trying to picture the sequence of events. Like I would love to see it because I love chaos. That would be the most hilarious outcome of this list.
I think that the most likely is an offensive coordinator, not necessarily one of the young guns. It might be someone like a Bieniemy or a Leftwich. Bieniemy has the advantage of you steal from inside your division.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think he's, I hope this is not racially coded, but I think he's thought of more as a manager of people and less as a designer of offenses.
Okay.
Well, at the moment, the Broncos need to manage people.
With Russell, you need a manager of people, even more than you need a designer of offenses.
Very, very weird people.
Yes.
There's a lot to say about this, but a lot of coverage in Seattle, even before the trade, was how Wilson has changed. And I think, no, he's been a weirdo for a decade. You just weren't paying attention because they were winning a bunch of football games. He's always been this way. Maybe they kept it under wraps better. Maybe they managed it better. But
I think people
this
knew
is who he is, guys.
I think
he's
they just
weird
weirdo because he was a really good player.
Right. Well, elsewhere in the list of really good players, or people who were really good players, actually probably still are for right now, J.J. Watt announces his retirement. And if it hadn't been for Aaron Donald, I'd probably call this guy the greatest defensive player of his generation. When we started, we got the defeats numbers, the idea for defeats from someone else. Someone else.
We
invented
got
it.
them from Roland Beach,
Thank
who's
you.
a well-known NBA analytics guy who used to write a football site called 2 Minute Warning when I started back in 2003. That was one of the very rare other football analytics sites.
Yes.
And that's where the idea for defeats comes from. And we currently have defeats counted for every season back to 1994.
Mhm.
And Watt had 56 in 2012. Nobody else has ever had more than 50 in a season.
Yeah. I believe that was the year he led the league in sacks and tackles for loss and run plays and passes swatted down the line, which I mean, beyond the obvious on paper idea of how difficult that is to do. It's really, really hard to be a dominant edge rusher and a dominant interior penetrating run defender because one, by definition, you're usually looping around to the outside. The other, by definition, you're running to the inside where the run is going. And it's usually an either or proposition. You can be really, really great at one or the other, but very rarely both. JJ Watt was the best at both. And
Yeah, that 5-year stretch before injuries got him matches up with any other defender in NFL history. I mean, I think his lack of longevity with all the injuries takes him out of the very tippy top conversation there. But when he was in full form, I'm not sure there has been a better defender that I have seen. He is up there with anyone you want to name. He was a destructive force.
Yeah, I think if you talk about the greatest defensive player ever, you would have to favor someone like Reggie White because of the longer career. You know, I always talk about with best ever that there's peak in career. Mm-hmm. Like Watt is absolutely in the discussion for greatest defender ever peak.
Exactly.
But his career, I think, was not as strong enough to be the best defender ever career-wise.
Absolutely.
Because he had total about 5 or 6 good years, not a decade of great years.
Yeah. So, and in those 5 years, he won Defensive Player of the Year 3 times. So, I mean, it just absolutely just was the absolute peak. Will be in Canton about 3 seconds after he's eligible. Like, absolute first ballot. Amazing player. And I'm glad he's retiring now. He never became a shell of himself. I mean, he's no longer the same player as he was, but he's still he's
still pretty good.
Exactly.
He is probably the best player on that team. Granted, the team is terrible, but he's
the best very good year. I mean, I'd say their best player is DeAndre Hopkins, but he's the best player on that defense.
Yeah. But yes, J.J. Watt, Aaron Donald, Lawrence Taylor, the only players with 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards. And so congratulations, JJ, on your retirement. Well deserved. And we wish you nothing but the best with your growing family, by the way. His last home game was attended by his new baby. And I don't know if that influenced his decision or not, but it was a nice moment. Let's see. Let's get to the red zone. We talked about the red zone earlier with Denver. We have a lot of teams here with they tend to play very well for about 80 yards of the field. And then those last 20 are a real problem. Brian, talk to me about some of these teams.
Yeah, Aaron suggested I put this in this today because I think he wants to talk about the Patriots because, well, the Patriots are not particularly good on offense in general. They're 27th in offensive DVOA at negative 10%. They are dead last in the red zone at negative 45%. That's the biggest gap between overall offensive performance and red zone performance in the
league.
A
nightmare.
Yes.
The good news about this, first of all, a reminder to everyone that you can get all these red zone numbers in the FO Plus DVOA database by becoming an FO Plus subscriber. That's my secret reason for wanting to talk about this on the show. But also, remember, red zone is much more inconsistent than overall performance. So when you look at teams that have a big difference between their red zone performance and their overall performance, you get an idea of where sort of random flukiness, right? Red zone is more important, but it's also more randomly fluky. And maybe for some of these teams where they might improve or decline in the playoffs. The Patriots will probably not make the playoffs, so they will not probably improve in the playoffs when the red zone performance reverts. But 2 other teams that are also bad in the red zone are San Francisco, which is 26th in the red zone and 7th overall, and Buffalo, which is 21st in the red zone and 3rd overall. And that suggests that both Buffalo and San Francisco might score more points in the playoffs as their red zone offense comes to be more like their overall offense.
Which is scary.
Yeah, in general, I think you're right. There may be some explanations why both of the teams might be doing worse in the red zone, other than flukiness randomness. The Niners rely so much on yards after the catch that's harder to do when there's less field to the catch. And for Buffalo, Josh Allen just can't stop throwing interceptions in the red zone. I think that is
right. See, that's what I think is random, though. Yeah. I think that the Josh Allen throwing the interceptions in the red zone as opposed to throwing the interceptions elsewhere is a very random, fluky. I don't see that continuing in the playoffs. I mean, I think in the playoffs he has the same chance of throwing interceptions in the red zone that he has anywhere else.
That's a big part of it, but Brian's talking about San Francisco and how their offense is built around yards after the catch, and it's hard to generate open space when you're at the very end of the field. There's not much space to open up in the first place. Kind of the same.
They're also supposed to be built around run blocking, and so I would think if you're a good run blocking team, which they've been better over the second half of the year, you should be able to score more in the red zone.
I wonder if they'll get better that when Elijah Mitchell comes back, because as good as McCaffrey is, you want to have Christian McCaffrey more on the outside than pounding in the middle, ideally, especially when everyone else is constantly hurt.
They are a good run blocking team, but if you look at their history over the years, they're not good in short yardage. They're a finesse run blocking team more than a power run blocking team, and I'm going to spitball in here, but maybe that is the kind of blocking scheme that doesn't work as well in the red zone as it does in the rest of the field. Maybe you need to just go all caveman and fire straight ahead into the guy in front of you, and that's not what they do. Well, that's not what they do best. That's not what they do best. But kind of the same thing. Buffalo, a lot of their offense, not all of it, but a lot of it is Josh Allen scrambling for big gains, and we know quarterback running in the red zone can be very effective, but it's hard to scramble for big games when all 11 defenders are within 20 yards of the line of scrimmage. So perhaps these are reasons that these particular offenses are playing worse in the red zone than they are everywhere else. I'm sure there's some regression that will come too, but there's reasons here that suggest this may not be totally random.
And then offenses that are particularly good in the red zone. I think people know about Tennessee because they've talked about it a lot on broadcast this year. So Tennessee is third in red zone DVOA, but 20th in offense overall. And then the other teams that are particularly good in the red zone, the Rams, who are sixth in the red zone, but 24th overall. And the Giants, speaking of teams that are going to make the playoffs, who are second in the red zone, but 15th overall. And I think that suggests that the Giants might be in for a little offensive scoring decline.
Yeah. The Giants have been punching above their weight class all year long, and it's credit to them for doing so. But it feels like a lot of what they were doing, especially the first half of the season, was unsustainable. And we've kind of seen everything fall off here in the back half of the season.
And you can kind of say the same thing about Tennessee. They're probably not going to make the playoffs now, but stranger things happen. But they're the same thing as the Giants, where they keep. It felt like they were playing badly but winning games somehow, and this is how, when they get in the scoring range, they get touchdowns, not field goals, and that is how you win games. Even if it's not sustainable over the long term, but that does explain a lot about Tennessee and the Giants, not so much the Rams, who have been a lost cause. Now, on the other side of the ball, if Tennessee does not make the playoffs, that means Jacksonville does. And their defense has not been good. Well, actually, most of the field, but especially bad in the red zone.
Yeah, they're dead last in red zone DVOA at the moment. Well, 27th overall, but they drop almost 20 points when they get into the red zone. So they have been a sieve-like down around the goal line.
So if there's a little bit of regression there, then that suggests more preventing of points for Jacksonville in the playoffs. That maybe they'll be a little bit better in the playoffs than they have been in the regular season. And the teams that are bad in the red zone include a couple of other playoff teams. Dallas, which is second on defense overall, but 15th in the red zone. And Tampa Bay, which is 9th overall, but 21st in the red zone.
Which is interesting because those last two teams are probably going to play each other in round one in the wildcard round. Or probably Dallas and Tampa Bay.
So they'll both have improved red zone defense against each other.
Bet the under is what I'm saying.
And then teams, just to finish up, teams that are particularly good in the red zone. The Rams, again, on defense, are good in the red zone. The Lions, who are 28th in defense overall, but 17th in the red zone. And Washington, which still might make the playoffs, 10th in defense overall, but 2nd in the red zone. They have the biggest gap in DVOA between their overall defense and their red zone defense. I'm going to call an audible here and see if anyone has an answer to Tom Berman's question. Do either of you have an early feeling about the Bills at the Bengals on Monday Night Football, which is huge for the number 1 seed implications?
Absolutely huge for it. I mean, it might well be between the Bills getting the number 1 seed and the number 3 seed and having to play one of the better AFC wildcard teams. Because it's in Cincinnati, I do kind of like the Bengals in this one. I like that. I think that they have been so on fire these past few weeks. Not so much the second half against New England, but I had written the Bengals off for dead when they were faced the hardest schedule and they were doing so. But over this past month, they have kicked so much into high gear that I kind of like the Bengals to take this one.
I hate to say this to Hitchhiker's Pie as a Patriots fan, but in order for the Bills to rest people in Week 18, Kansas City has to lose to Denver. It's not going to happen.
New head coach bounce.
I know as a Patriots fan, we want it to happen. It's not going to happen. The Bills are going to have to play people in Week 18. It's interesting. I think this is one of those games. Bengals and Chiefs are that they got Von Miller for, and Von Miller's not there.
Yeah,
and that's kind of tough. But their secondary pass rushers can get past whoever is going to be replacing La'el Collins.
Yeah.
So I probably Hakeem Adeniji. So I think it's a pretty close and even matchup. I haven't done any matchup breakdowns on it or anything, but it's pretty close.
My gut, and is nothing but gut, nothing intellectual or analytical about this, but the Bengals struggled so much out of the gate, and in hindsight, we maybe should have expected that because they were rebuilding their offensive line entirely, and it took some time on the field for them to gel. So it makes sense why they would kind of stutter and be an average team for the first 6-7 weeks there, and then when I believe they won 7 in a row now. Now on the other hand, looking at the Bills' schedule, they've won 6 in a row, and the 3 games they have lost this year, 2 points to Miami, 3 points to the Jets, and overtime to the Vikings. And at least 2 of those had absolutely crazy circumstances.
Yes, the Vikings one was total nonsense, and the Miami one was in a sauna.
Yeah. So they're 12-3 here, 12-3, and maybe better than that. So I don't know. It's a big game. I feel like I know that the numbers say San Francisco's been the hottest team in the NFC for the past 6 weeks or whatever, and I know Dallas just beat Philadelphia, but I'm still very confident with 2 weeks left in the regular season that Philly is going to escape the NFC and get to the Super Bowl. I think the AFC is way more wide open. I think there's way more contenders there. These are 2 of them. Kansas City's there. I can imagine Baltimore when Lamar Jackson.
Our numbers still really like Baltimore if Lamar Jackson is healthy.
Yep. And it would not be the craziest thing if someone like a Justin Herbert or Trevor Lawrence catches fire and just rips off a couple of upsets. So I think the NFC playoff field to me feels like what's the word? It's done already.
Fait accompli.
Thank you. That's the fancy literature term for that. The AFC, it seems like a lot more possibilities. So a lot more, which makes it a lot more exciting.
Yeah, and with so many so many live teams, the AFC at the bottom of the NFC is probably not going to do very much in the playoffs. With so many live outs in the AFC, getting that bye week, just avoiding that first round of games entirely is huge. Which is why the Monday night game this week is the biggest game of the week, one of the biggest games of the year. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be better than anything we have on Sunday, most likely.
Yeah, I believe there's no games on Sunday. No games on Sunday between two teams with winning records.
That's correct.
The only game this week between two teams with winning records is Monday Night Football.
Yeah. Old school best game of the week.
Yep.
The 17-game season here rearing its head with a lot of teams playing out the string and a lot of mismatches down the stretch. And that's the way it goes. But we're talking about this NFC playoff race here, and we can talk about some of these teams in the NFC North fighting for playoff position. The Lions and Packers, both currently in the top 5 in weighted DVOA.
In the NFC.
In the NFC. In the
They're in the
NFC.
top 10 overall. But the top 10 overall, both top 5 in the NFC. And they are after you get past the Eagles and the Cowboys and the 49ers, they're next, except both of them are currently out of playoff position. So they're not both going to get in. But both of them have been playing really good football after being left for dead earlier in this season. The Packers over the last 4 weeks are 4th in overall DVOA. They're back. They're now just a half game out of the playoffs. They are. I thought the Packers season was over. I thought they were done.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was time to see what Jordan Love could do. I thought, this has been a disaster. The receivers aren't doing anything. And then over the past month, the receiver's name just escaped my head entirely.
Christian Watson.
That's the one. Christian Watson has been on fire. Finally, he's gotten some chemistry. Aaron Rodgers has got some chemistry with these rookie receivers, and they look like the Packers we've seen over the last couple years. And then as for the Lions, well, up until this last week, they were good. The Lions allowed 240 rushing yards in the first half against the Carolina Panthers.
They had allowed 50 rushing yards the week before to the Jets. 50.
They hadn't allowed 100-yard. Yeah, they hadn't allowed a 100-yard rusher since week 5, and they allowed 200-yard rushers in the first half against the Panthers. That was my most surprising result of the week. They just got stomped into the ground.
Yeah. The Panthers are rallying. The Steve Wilkes Express just keeps on rolling. I think I mentioned this, but he still has a chance to win more games for the Panthers in 2/3 of a season than Matt Rule ever did in a full season, which I would love to see. As the more I learn about Matt Rule, the more I dislike him intensely. But he's the Bachelor's problem now.
The winner of Week 18 Lions Packers makes the playoffs 40% of the time, but if they both win this week, then that game becomes 75% of the time.
Yeah, that game, if the cards fall right, it require, I think, a Commanders loss and a Seahawks loss. The Packers-Lions game would be a play-in game in Week 18. So when we're talking about like what game is going to get flexed to the Sunday Night Football in Week 18, it's still probably Jaguars-Titans, but there are other options available.
I think there's also a backwards flex. I think one game gets flexed Saturday night this year, so they could really use 2 of those games because then they can play one of them on Saturday night and one of them on Sunday night.
Yeah, because the other big tasty one would be the potential AFC North championship between the Bengals and Ravens, but they probably want the Bengals playing at the same time as the Chiefs and Bills for bye week and seeding options. So yeah, it'd be nice. It'd be nice to have those kind of play-in games, and Packers-Lions might be one of those.
Detroit this week hosts Chicago, and the Packers host the Vikings.
The Minnesota Vikings, who are made of magic and craziness and everything we keep saying week after week after week after week.
Best ever, in case people haven't seen me tweeting about this, they're the luckiest team in history compared to Pythagorean projection.
Yeah.
They have 4.4 wins over their Pythagorean projection. Like, they're ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
If you're not familiar, Pythagorean expectation, it takes points scored to points allowed and figures out how many games you should win based on that. And the Vikings don't score many points, and they give up a ton, but somehow they win a lot of games.
They're basically equal. They're +5 in point differential.
Right.
Yeah, this week it was the franchise record 61-yard field goal that won the game for them. Because why not? We've already done the biggest comeback in NFL history. We've already done fumbles at the goal line. Just they have a big checklist of every impossible way to win a football game, and they're just going down it as the season goes along. It's absolutely crazy. At the end of every season, I do kind of if all the one-score games reverse, kind of this is the alternate universe if things were slightly different. The Vikings are in dead last in the NFC if you flip all the one-score games in the NFL because they've won 11 games by 8 or fewer points. 11.
And no losses. 11-0.
That's an NFL record. No team has ever won 11 one-score games in a season before.
No matter what happens to this team, if they win the Super Bowl, if they lose it, if they don't get there, no matter what, we need a good NFL Films documentary recapping all this impossible outcomes over
They
and
have
over and over
they have
again.
carved their place in NFL history for sure as the least sensible, most crazy team that we have ever seen. We keep saying it. It's got to stop eventually. They can't win 16 one-score games and end up winning the Super Bowl. It's not going to happen.
Yeah,
Can't.
either they're going to have to lose a close game, or they're going to have to win a big game.
Yeah.
So, something has to happen. I felt a little bit bad that we keep trashing the Vikings week after week after week. So I did some digging, and I did find some Justin Jefferson stats because it's worth at least celebrating that. Yes, the Vikings do some things well. Jefferson, the NFL is reporting that he had his 24th game with more than 100 receiving yards. That's the most by any player in their first 4 seasons, which is especially impressive because this is Justin Jefferson's 3rd season, so he's already cut that. So I dug into the DYAR database. Jefferson has 1,287 career DYAR, and that's currently 2nd most for a player for the first 3 seasons. Randy Moss was at 1,335, so he's about a 40 DYAR short of passing Randy Moss for the most productive receiver in his first 3 seasons by our numbers. He's already 3rd through his first 4 seasons behind Moss and Michael Thomas. So Jefferson is setting DYAR records while the Vikings are doing whatever the heck they're doing everywhere else.
Hitchhiker's Pie wants to know if I'm still invited on the NFL Top 10 show. They don't do the NFL Top 10 show anymore, so I'm not invited on the show that doesn't exist. The only appropriate way for the Viking season to end is the kicker missing a 21-yard walk-off field goal.
Yeah, that would be appropriate.
All right, moving on elsewhere in the NFC. Brock till you drop. Brock never stop. The Brock Purdy and the 49ers continue to win and continue to rack up big numbers.
Multiple touchdown passes again. Purdy is only the 2nd quarterback in NFL history to start his career 3-0 with multiple touchdown passes in each game, joining Kurt Warner. So I guess we'll have a documentary on Purdy one of these days. Purdy,
not a documentary, baby.
Yeah,
a biopic starring Zach Levy as Brock Purdy.
Absolutely. I'll be looking forward to that one coming to a theater near you. I love this stat. Purdy is the 4th player with a touchdown pass of 30 or more air yards in San Francisco since 2020. None of them Jimmy Garoppolo. So Purdy's done it. Trey Lance has done it. CJ Beathard's done it. Christian McCaffrey has done it. But none for Jimmy G, who took over first place in DVOA this week, didn't he? Garoppolo came.
Yes, Garoppolo is now number 1 in passing DVOA for the year among qualifying quarterbacks. Tua dropped below him.
That's what kind of
Garoppolo, then Tua, and then Mahomes.
For this week for my Thursday article, I'm doing the all rookie team, and for the past month, I've been trying to talk myself out of having Purdy over Kenny Pickett because Pickett's played the whole year. I mean, he's the only quarterback who's played the whole year. Surely he wins by default. But every week that Purdy does something, it's that much harder to justify someone deep in the negatives of DVOA under Purdy.
Updated individual defense stats are up on the Google Drive, by the way.
Yes.
There's some inside baseball, inside football for all the people who are watching. So that'll help with that article.
Yeah.
Speaking of great rookies, by the way, Marcus Jones, what position do you put him at?
Returner. That's where I'm putting him as a special teams guy. But Jones, he's the only player in the last 75 years to have a receiving, punt return, and interception touchdown return in the same season, which is easy. And he joins Deion Sanders as the only player with 40-yard receiving, punt return, and interception returns in an entire career, and he's still a rookie.
Yeah,
15 games or whatever it is.
Yeah,
he gives you an actual reason to watch the plodding Patriots.
Yeah, I mean Belichick. I want to see more on offense, and Belichick says we can't give him a full receiver's workload. Like, yeah, try it. I want to see that.
With Jack Jones and Jalen Mills hurt, they need him on defense.
Yeah. But again, they're not going anywhere. So let's see him play 60 minutes both ways.
Well, they're still playing for it, but yeah. Is Troy Brown the most recent player to do a high number of snaps both ways? No, Julian Edelman.
Yeah.
Patrick Ricard for many years.
Patrick Ricard. Yeah, Patrick Ricard would be even more There was Nick Ballore.
Nick Ballore does a lot for Seattle. There's a fullback slash
Patrick
linebacker,
Ricard,
right? Well, a lot, I
Ricard,
should say.
yeah.
An even split.
And then if you're looking for someone who was a wide receiver, it would be Julian Edelman.
Yeah, there was. It's been a couple of years now, but I once just filtered all players who had played offensive and defensive snaps in the same season. Like there was like 8 across the league, and 4 of them were Patriots, because
That makes sense.
Belichick finds football players and has them make football plays.
Yep.
But the two-way team is a fun list, and for purely for entertainment's sake, it would be more fun if it happened more often. One team that does not need any help from offensive players, one defense that does not need any help from offensive players, is the Philadelphia Eagles, who are a threat to quarterbacks everywhere.
Yeah, the Eagles have now had 6+ sacks in 4 straight games, which is tied for the longest in the Super Bowl era and the longest since the passing rules changed to make passing, the 78 passing rule changes. They are, I believe, 1 sack away from having 5 players of double-digit sacks, which has never been done before. They are, the offense gets a lot of the hype because of what Jalen Hurts is doing and so on and so forth. That defense is a threat to anyone, anywhere, anytime. It's pretty incredible to watch because it's not one guy. They, like when I was doing pro voting and stuff like that, you have to give Eagles plenty of representation all over. But it's not like, well, this is the guy who's got to go in, or this guy's got Nick Sweat, you got Brandon, you got everyone coming from all different angles, all of them, with 8 sacks, 9 sacks, 10 sacks. Like they are already, I think they're 1 sack away from their franchise record already with 2 games to play.
They will not have an all-pro defender.
Yeah. They should, but there's no one is standing up so far above everyone else.
I'm surprised here. There's 6+ sacks in 4 straight games. That has not been done since the 1976 49ers. As someone who watched some 1980s football and has studied a lot of it, no Bears team or no Giants team or no Eagles team, for that matter, from that era was able to do that, which is kind of blows me away. But sacks were way more common in the 1980s than they have been anytime since.
6 is a lot. I mean, six is a lot because if you're going down over and over again, you're running draws, you're doing anything you can to get the ball out of your quarterback's hands, and the Eagles don't care. The Eagles are coming after you no matter what.
All right, Brian, we have the playoff, as you yourself labeled this here, playoff nonsense.
Yeah.
Teams that can clinch and or be eliminated this week. What are the stakes here in week 17?
All right, so it's weird because there are still so many teams alive. It's unusual even under the 14-team playoff format to have so many teams still alive. Only 4 teams can actually qualify this week. The Giants, Commanders, Buccaneers, and Dolphins could all punch their playoff tickets with 1 week to play. But there are 10 teams who are still alive who could get knocked out this week. The Commanders, the Lions, the Packers, the Seahawks, the Panthers, the Saints, the Patriots, the Jets, the Raiders, the Steelers. Like all these teams are just hanging on there at the fringes of the playoff race. They're not all going to get eliminated, but we're going to see a lot of bodies fall.
It's the mediocrity. It's because the whole league is 7-8 right now.
Yeah, you've got 6 good teams, and everyone else is just kind of hanging around there trying to get into the tournament and see what they can do. We don't quite have an elimination game, but we do have something pretty close. The Jets and Seahawks is almost an elimination game. The Jets are out with a loss no matter what. The Seahawks are out with a loss and a win by either the Commanders or the Lions and Packers. But that's the closest we have to like a playoff game here in Week 17 because the loser's pretty much done, and the winner gets to move on. The winner gets to have a relevant Week 18.
Yeah.
And Mike White's coming back, so I don't know. Maybe that tips it back to the Jets.
We talked last week, and you wrote off the Seahawks win over the Jets as a fait accompli to bring a full circle. And
Geno Smith, revenge game, right?
And Pete Carroll revenge game.
Yeah,
but you were talking about chaos earlier, and the idea of Pete Carroll coaching Russell Wilson. What if Pete Carroll's coaching Russell Wilson, but somehow it's in New York with the Jets? No, it's not going to happen.
Franchise is destroyed in the wake of the moves that would require that to happen. But yes,
that's not going to happen.
Sleepy Time Junction. Your question about one trade to make a team an instant playoff contender is probably better for February.
Yeah, there's
Because this year, everybody's a playoff contender. They're all 7-8.
yeah. The most obvious one is the Jets getting a better quarterback.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know what quarterback could be available in trade. So I don't know.
I would trade a competent offensive coordinator to the Patriots.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be a good start.
or even just any offensive coordinator.
Competent
Technically, they don't have one right now.
The Matt Patricia experiment. I want to be the long form explanation of everything that's going on here. We'll never get it. We'll never get all the details.
Never.
I would love to know how that happened.
Never.
Okay, well, I believe that is going to do it for us today. I want to thank everyone for listening. I want to thank our friends at Underdog Fantasy. And I want to remind everyone that you can play on Underdog Fantasy with us and double your first deposit up to $100 with promo code OUTSIDERS. If your season-long fantasy teams are floundering, you can play Underdog's Battle Royale, a fast 6-round weekly fantasy football draft with easier chances to win than traditional daily fantasy sports sites. You can even win $50,000 if you grab first place, or try their pick'em games where you can easily pick players' chances to go higher or lower than their projected stat lines, even in states where traditional prop betting currently isn't available. Underdog is the fastest growing fantasy site around. Join the fun over at underdogfantasy.com or download Underdog in the App Store and use promo code OUTSIDERS now to double your first deposit up to $100. I want to remind everyone to sign up for FO Plus at footballoutsiders.com/subscribe. You get your red zone splits, your third down splits, your home road splits and DVOA, NFL betting picks, fantasy advice, premium stats, premium articles, and ad-free experience. All of these are good things. And I want to invite everyone to join us in the Football Outsiders Discord as we get into the final stretch here of the playoff race. And then, of course, once the playoffs begin. I believe that is going to do it for the day. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Brian. And most of all, thank you, the Football Outsiders listeners, because without you, there is no show. That was fun. Let's do it again next week.
Sounds good. Don't forget all of our shows, 1 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and Twitch every day.